Yeah, we were just talking about the different experiences of us being kind of that other tier that ran, that were inspired to be a part of the process, but then like not even getting shout outs at your church, you know, like you were saying.
Yeah. Well, I consider, even on the opening night, the way that they divided us at the library, I felt like there were 3 tiers, right?
Okay, because that night was 3 different tables. I was
three or four.
On the kids' table.
It's 3.
Right.
Well, I felt like there were 3 tiers. I felt like, one, you had Briley and Swain, right? And that had to do, to me, more with money, because they were the most well-funded.
And that was coming right out of the transit?
That was coming right out of the transit, right?
Debate.
And then there was the next level, and this was determined by the Tennessean, right? And it was the grouping, and I think, in my opinion, that set the tone for how people were going to vote. I'm just saying that. I'm putting that out there. Because in the second division, it was Harold Love, Erica Gilmore, Reverend Carr. And please forgive me if I don't call him Reverend. I call him Jeff.
Jeff, yeah. Okay.
I mean, not that I don't acknowledge that he's a Reverend, but he's cool as heck, you know. So
he was super cool. Yeah.
So is Ralph Highland, Erica Gilmore, Jeff Carr, Harold Love. No. Some of those were with Briley and Swain. I don't know, but either way, to me, that there was a 3 definition. And then when I looked at the Nashville scene and the way that they characterized them, it was clearly to me 3 different tiers. And it really played out that way when you look at it, because when you look at Jeff Carr, he was the face of the transit bill, right? The defeat of the transit bill. So he got a certain number of votes. Harold Love is a known commodity, mostly in the 37208 area code, but
been around.
There's a building on TSU's campus named after his dad, right?
Okay.
Then you got Erica Gilmore. Her mom is Brenda Gilmore, right? And you got Ralph Bristol, who for a number of years represented a very, extreme. He won't call it extreme, but the wing until he became more independent. Conservative radio host, and he had an identifiable fan base. And when you look at the numbers, those 4 people outside of Carol Swain and David Briley, along with if you tag Highland at the end of it.
Because he was Highland ended up being the top of the lower tier.
Of the lower tier
and
of
then
us.
Jeff Carr was the bottom of the upper tier.
Of the upper tier.
Like there was a
line
there.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, for it to go down that way, and I'm not blaming, but for the media to prognosticate that was going to be the case, I think the only thing that it affected was us. Because I feel like some of after our performance in the initial mayoral forums, the feedback that I was getting was like, oh, wait a second. I thought I knew who I was going to vote for, but some of you guys down here, and they called it, the lower level, you're making sense,
Dude, I was like, interestingly enough, I had some of my best feedback from that last forum at what's the big church?
The 15th Street Baptist?
Yeah. And it was like, wow, there's some other people out here that they see they're glad to have these other alternatives up there. It's not just the known variables that show up.
Yeah.
But it was like, but damn, the thing's over. It was like a month, and it's like we're in and we're out. But I was like, all right, so there's I'll call them the fellow travelers. Like there's other people out there that are of this similar mindset. They're like, yeah, we're kind of sick of the business as usual that we see in other candidates, because they had no idea who the rest of us were.
Right.
And it was like, I don't blame you. Like you have to really go out of your way to find all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was my thing, is even the local NPR affiliate, their online article got rid of all website links. Like if you went and you can't link to a website.
Right.
I was like, so
how are people going to dig into your platform?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was my joke, is that let me get dismissed on my own terms.
Right. I do a pretty good job of you discounting me on my own.
Like let me earn that dismissal.
Yeah. Well, for me, I actually had slightly different reasons. Wasn't so much that I was sick of business as usual. I mean, let's face it, we live in a pretty cool city. It doesn't mean that we don't have problems. We have serious problems. We have problems with public schools. We have problems with congestion, and people got to stop calling it transit. The congestion issues. We've got some crime issues. We've got some community policing issues. We've got inequality of income, household income, right? That being said, there's a lot worse places to live in America than Nashville.
No doubt.
And so my personal reason started at, I wanted to make a really big impact locally. And by locally, I'm talking about my district.
Okay.
I wanted to run for Bo Mitchell's seat, which, by the way, we supported Bo when he got elected in 2015, I believe, or 2016. Me and my wife and the people that kind of in our community, right? I live in Bellevue, so
you've been disappointed.
No.
Okay.
I knew he was probably going to run for something higher at some point. And when he vacated that seat, I was like, okay, and so I sat down. I actually have a team, and we strategized, and then everything happened with Megan Barry, and they were like, you should run for mayor. I was like, that's not what I was trying to do. And they're like, look,
so
if you run for mayor, yes,
there.
and
like,
the worst that can happen is that you get your name out there. And then when you run for district, our people know who you are. You can kind of galvanize Bellevue a little bit because nobody else that we know of is running. So I made alliances with the Chamber of Commerce, the Bellevue. The Predators are building their new practice facility in Bellevue.
That's right, at the old mall.
Yeah. Well, it'll be across the highway.
Okay.
And they actually had the Bellevue Community Picnic, their annual community picnic there. So that was a huge deal for me because that was kind of my coming out to my friends. Oh yeah, we all had booths there. I mean, like there was only a couple people that weren't there.
Booth?
No, we had to pay.
Okay, because they kept hitting me up, and I was like, "You don't want me at your picnic. Let me spare your picnic." But then I was talking to Jeff Napier. He told me he had plans. Did he tell you?
Yeah, he was going to try skydive in, and they said no, they couldn't get the permit.
And I was like, yes, what?
I was like, no, Jeff, don't do it.
But his analysis was that everyone there was on board, but he feels that there was pressure from the Briley camp that they didn't want another candidate to land out of a plane and onto this picnic.
Maybe so.
But I was like, I just thought that was great, but...
after getting out there was nowhere for him to land. I mean, even if he
said he had some sort of clearance with somebody, and I was like, you talked to whoever.
He would have had to land on a picnic table because
he said he could. He said
listen, maybe he's that good. Maybe he's that good. That's my buddy Jeff. Maybe he's that good.
So you feel it was that a bust, the picnic, or you thought it was great outreach?
No. I thought it was great.
Was it hot as hell?
It was.
Yeah.
It was crazy hot. We had a tent. We were able to present ourselves. When we looked at Carol Swain's tent, she wasn't even there. She was there for the intro. Like, they introduced us on stage, and it was me, Albert Hacker, Swain, Harold Love, Carr, Erica Gilmore. Highland came by, but he didn't have a tent. You didn't come. Jeff Napier came. He had the biggest one out of all of us. He must have used his parachute, of the tent. I'm like, good gracious, dude! They introduced us, and Briley had a tent, but Briley wasn't there
because he was more walking around later on at the end of the day or something.
Correct. So, but at any rate,
did you get to speak there too?
They gave each of us, like 30 seconds at the intro at the beginning of the whole thing, and that's where I, basically rallied Bellevue and was like, I'm a Bellevue boy, right? And I live, down the street in Saddle Branch and blah 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 blah. And Jeff got up after me, Napier, and said, "Well, why are the rest of us even talking? Because this is the Bellevue Community Picnic, and you got." But it was a great experience. The overall is one of the best experiences of my life.
Really?
Yeah, man, it was.
Wow, that's awesome. And do you participating in that type of activity?
Yeah, so I've always been
like it demystified it because that's kind of what.
I've kind of been on the inside a little bit. So my father worked for the federal government for a number of years. He was an agent with the United States Commission on Civil Rights in the Reagan administration.
Okay.
He was also a regional director with HUD for a little while.
You mentioned that, I think, at one of the forums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up in all kind of political pockets in the Midwest. So you want to talk about Evan Bayh and Birch Bayh from Indiana. You want to talk about Reverend Jesse Jackson or Farrakhan at Operation Push, or Mayor Harold Washington in Chicago, where my dad worked for a number of years. My dad looked like Mayor Washington. His nickname was the Mayor. My dad's nickname was the Mayor.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah, I've known mayors from South Bend, Indiana, Niles, Michigan. In fact, I had mayors on my advisory council. I put together this little advisory council. So where I work with government agencies. So I get to touch mayors and councilmen from other cities, which is why I had a plan for absolutely everything that they were ever asking in all of those forums. Because once I decided to run, it wasn't just about getting my name out there. I said, well, let me put in the work. Let me do the research. I didn't want to, now that's the part I didn't know. I didn't know that you could BS your way, through an interview, a public interview. I thought you actually had to have real plans, that you have had to have consulted with some people and have an actual agenda. And so I came prepared, but I had all of that in my arsenal growing up around that. So I've known about the ugliness. I've known about the payoffs. I know about I was on Howard Gentry's team briefly when he ran for mayor umpteen years ago. When I first moved here 22 years ago, and like 4 years after that, I was like a young guy I was a technical advisor. This was before social media, but we were trying to do social media stuff. Okay. I don't even think that he knew my name.
Okay.
Right? But he knows me now, but I'm just saying. So one of the first people that I met was the director of housing here, Mr. Smiley, because my dad was director of housing for the city of South Bend, and met him at the National Council of Mayors. So my dad was a consultant, and as a kid, I was an intern with his company, and we would go to the National Conference of Mayors every year, and I'd be in the booth, and I got to meet mayors. I'm telling you, like, name them, mayors in New York, Miami, Boston. I go down the line. So this wasn't uncomfortable for me. In fact, I feel kind of late to the game because I got addicted to the private world.
How old are you?
I just turned 48 yesterday. Right, other people talk like I have cancer. Like, how long have you had that?
Yeah, no, my birthday's December 8th. So what's yours? January
2nd.
Dang, okay. So I always got like half Christmas.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, okay,
and my daughter was born on New Year's Day, so now nobody remembers my birthday.
You're like, she's more important anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I got 2 kids and broke my toe yesterday, but I'm not going to go into that. But do you feel like other people BS their way through lots of because you're saying like you did the homework, you're ready to answer like policies specific.
Absolutely.
But then you see other people and you're like, oh my God, you say whatever, and
yeah,
you're like, okay.
Yeah, and some people may be upset at this. And again, I actually think we have a camaraderie among the 13. I'm saying among the 13. There's some people I haven't talked to since then, and probably won't. Not because I'm upset or just because, but I'll tell the truth. And the truth is that some folks got up there and BS their way. And when I say some folks, I'm talking about the serious candidates who wanted to win.
All right, I was like, who would you say BS there?
No, because when you're asked a question about infrastructure, when you're asked a question about public school and funding, and where certain things are in the process of that have already been started, if all you have to say is we need to come together, we need to be a team, we need to win, then you either are dumbing it down for the lowest common denominator, which is a strategy, is a legit strategy, or you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
Scared to answer the question.
Okay, yeah. Like they do know, but they don't want to. You're saying, or they don't know at all?
No, they don't know. They don't want to reveal that they don't have a plan.
And they're
like just put me in office and I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. And I feel I feel blessed that work ethic was put inside of me to do the work ahead of time for anything that I do. Because every TV interview that I did, every radio interview that I did, every newspaper interview that I did, I was consistent, I was concise, and it was identifiable. And that showed up in the NOAA meeting. I don't know if you went to yeah, you did, because I saw you outside.
That
in the room with 75 people.
Nashville Neighborhoods?
Yes. Yeah, Committee for National Neighborhoods.
Council
that was kind of intimidating going to that room.
That was and that was a difference, because I was kind of getting used to the theater of the whole thing. So it's like, all right, you have the one-on-ones from the Tennessean reporters.
Right.
Then you have these big things, like at the library is a large room.
Right.
And we, are up there on stage, elevated above them. And then you come there and it's like sharing a table with, is it John Summers?
Yes, Summers.
And then then you have like 75,
and you got 75 to 100 people, and they're all sitting there like this, looking at you.
Like, so that was one of those things that's like, I didn't come hard with the comedy game there, because I kind of wanted to respect their time, and I was like, well, I could tell maybe some of you haven't read my platform, and that's okay. So I try to not expose them to, not expose my ridiculousness to that, try to play it somewhat
the straight
real
game
and be like, yeah, there are issues, no doubt. That's why I'm up here. I'm going to try to expose them through some sort of comedy, but things need, there's a discussion that needs to be had, because not everyone's at the table, I feel like.
That was a big night for me personally, because when I got there, they were doing it in alphabetical order, and Summers didn't have my name on the list.
Oh, wow.
And so I was supposed to be first, and he ended up saying, well, we can add you, and they were...
Then, did Briley, one of the higher-ups moved their schedule and kind of like
bumped everybody around.
Yeah.
So I ended up being last, which ended up being a blessing in disguise, because people were tired. They had been through all the, that everybody else had made their points, and because we couldn't all be in the room at the same time, remember, they were bringing us in one at a time.
And that you have to wait till the other person leaves, and then you go in.
I ran from there to Trinity Lane to the a similar meeting but smaller that I was aware of, and I got to test out what my responses were going to be, because they asked the very same questions.
Oh, great.
It was a smaller neighborhood group in the 37208, because I had 2 hours to waste, and so I ran back over to the main meeting, and when I came in last, they brought me in last, I could tell people were tired, and I started off, I said, look, it's been a long night, I understand everybody. I said, let me tell you before I'm asked the question, will I commit to this, to adding a council seat for the neighborhoods? Yes. They looked at me almost like, where did he get that? Well, I got it from the other meeting. And I said, let me tell you my 3 things, and then you can ask me any question that you want to. And at the end, I got like I probably got the second loudest ovation to you, because I was sitting in the lobby when you got done with yours, and they were pretty fresh still there, and whatever you said just cracked them up, and they started laughing.
I primed them for you there.
I was a ways after that. And so the article that came out, if you remember, was that, I don't know, it was for the first time, but they could not endorse a candidate because they did not have,
I remember that,
majority consensus. And when they started going, they said Briley got the most votes, but he didn't get the majority. Harold Love came in second. They said, and a close third was Carlin Alford.
I remember reading that. I was like, oh, my man, what happened? Yeah, because I remember you being in the lobby and like explaining to me the kind of scheduling snafu. I was talking with Carol, because Carol Swain, she had just, maybe she was right after me or right before me.
She was upset.
Was she?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know, because of the switch. I think it was because of Briley's schedule. She either got bumped or something like that. And Harold Love was trying to talk her down outside. That was kind of.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was weird, because I was like. Okay.
About it.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, that's the way. I feel like that's the way it was.
He stuck his neck out for me, because at that at the one at Meharry, Pumps and Politics.
Yeah.
I left the room when they were pulling names out of the hat.
Yeah.
And because no one told me how the procedure was kind of, there's so many of us and people coming in, and so I was like, am I on this? And so he got off stage, introduced me to somebody. I was like, dude, thank you, like for being a human, you know, and like because he could have just easily been like, you figured out.
I'm gonna tell you, it was.
But
weird.
He was super helpful that night.
It was weird. It was not weird, but it was. This is why I say it was one of the best experiences of my life. I had no clue where everybody else was coming from. Like I didn't know what what was motivating them or whatever, because it was such a crazy hair on fire. All right, go. All right, run for 2 months. And
at first it was because it was like, well, you might be running through August.
Right, didn't know. We didn't know.
It was like switched like right away. I was like, oh goodness.
We didn't know. And one person, I mean, I made several new friendships. One person that I did not see coming was Ralph Bristol. Like Ralph and I are cool.
Really?
Yes.
Dude, and he and I talked backstage at a couple things, and I was like, wow, he's a person. And we just like talked about other things. Yeah, and he was like,
I'm thinking that I'm gonna, and I'm just gonna be brutally honest. I'm thinking I'm gonna get this Trump-like authoritarian, and he's got some of that in him. Like, I'm gonna be your next mayor, and I think you're gonna like it.
I just want to hear him talk.
He's got the greatest voice. I know. But we gave our stump speeches at a community event in Madison on a Sunday, and nobody was there. And I had brought a video crew out there, whatever, and he got up and called me his friend. He was like, you know, we're coming down to the end of this thing.
Dude, that's
and
great.
He's like, you know, like my friend Carlin Alford said, we want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm not even sure, remember what I was that I said that we agreed on. But I was like, that is amazing. Because I've listened to him on WTN and I've shut him off on WTN just because, you know, I felt like, you know, a lot of stuff that he said was divisive, you know, and that it was, so a lot was racially,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you meet somebody and you see a good heart, then you realize as an American, we just have different paths. We believe there are different paths to get to where we all want to go. And
but
if you
can similar outcomes.
Yeah, and the one forum I didn't make was the Problems of Politics. I was speaking at a school awards banquet,
you were at that one.
And that was the one where he said something, and Jeff Carr came to Bristol's, you know, kind of aid or defense.
Like, let him say his thing, and then
it was kind of like it was about police profiling.
Don't attack him personally.
Yeah.
If you don't like what he says, then you present your evidence, saying, you know, to him.
Yeah.
Of your point of view.
That was really cool. So you got Jeff coming to Bristol's aid. You got Bristol speaking on my behalf. I think the one person that nobody crossed over was Carol Swain.
She and I kind of broed down before that community council for national neighborhoods thing. I don't know why. Well, she was like, she said, well, since you're asking people not to vote for you, you should tell them to vote for me. And I was like, oh, what's that pay?
Nice.
It was like.
I think there was, you know, she and Erica kind of got into it, but I think that was planned. I think Erica, then that was at the Pumps and Politics because I was watching it.
That must have been after I went on, because I went on
first. Yeah, the fireworks happened after that.
Napier, Highland, Love Jr. was in that group. Julia, Clark Johnson, I think Albert Hacker. So it was weird. It was still like the first thing, but Harold Love was in there. Maybe to lighten up the second round. I don't know. Well polished, you know, and always dresses well. I need to get him to teach, because doesn't he know he has a certain way of tying a tie?
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like, man, he is always on point.
Well, but I mean that night.
So they had
but Erica really kind of wanted to use that against her, Carol's controversial comments where she ended up leaving Vanderbilt, talking about Black Lives Matter movement.
Trying to bring that into
discussion. And then Carol.
Did it work?
It got real a little bit with Ralph. The niceties dropped a little bit, and then people, you know, really were kind of coming at. And then Carol and Erica got into it. But Carol and I would always talk cordially in a little bit, and I'll just share this real quick funny story. We were at the last really group function, was at 92Q at the live, you know, broadcast. It went really, really well. And at some point in time, the host said something, and Carol Swain got up. Each one of us was able to get up and respond to questions in any order we wanted to. It was really cool. And Carol got up and she said, the polls are saying that this is just boiling down to 2 candidates, myself and Mayor Briley. And honestly, I just feel like the rest of the candidates are kind of muddying the waters, or whatever it is that she said. She's basically saying, taking away from what really should be. And Ernie Allen, the host, said, are you guys going to sit there and take that? Like, is she right? Is this thing over? And Briley, I was sitting behind Briley. He and I always sat near each other because of alphabetical order.
I remember the first night I told you, I was like, dude, you're going to win because you're first.
So I've got pictures with him. He and I talked quite a bit. And, he leaned back. He goes, I think you should take this one. And I was like,
Briley did that?
Yeah. I was like, why me? So I got up and I looked her in the eye and I said,
well, that was nice of him to encourage you.
Yeah, but he wasn't going to. He was one of the 2. He wasn't going to say,
he's like, I agree.
It's got to be somebody. This guy here. So I got up and I looked her in the eye and I said, that is voter intimidation. I said, you're telling my voters that their vote doesn't matter because I'm not going to win. And I said, I'm not going to stand for it. I'm encouraging not just my voters, but those that vote for Al Hacker and Jeff Napier. And I went down the line and I said, you get out there and vote. When we live in a city where their voter turnout is 41st out of 42 metropolitan areas, to say that anybody's vote won't matter, and I could hear her in the background going, I didn't say that. And Ernie Allen was like, you had your chance. And so after, we went straight to break after that. And she came and she sat down next to me. She was like, I don't agree with the way you responded, but I like how you addressed it. And if I'm mayor, I might give you a call. And I said, if I make mayor, I might give you a call. And I got up and walked away.
That's great.
So
she was always nice, and I will say that about because she and I, like you and Briley, she and I were positioned because Sewell.
Okay,
So that last forum at the church, the big church, we were right next to each other, and so someone would say something, and there were a couple times where I kind of hammered home my more civil libertarian, decriminalize all this, and she was kind of like. She was like, you were passionate about that, kind of encouraging. I was like, oh, thanks.
You brought it home that night for yourself. I had heard your shtick before, and I was like, I don't know if that's gonna fly here because there's a different group. These people came with notepads and stuff like that. This is a real
multiple
community.
Cameras.
Yeah, it's 1,200 people in there, and I was like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, John, if you go, don't vote for me. And Briley's nudging me, this ought to be good. And man, you nailed it, or whatever. But that was also.
Well, that was kind of and especially in that district where it's what's up with sending kids to jail for weed? And there it hit home because I'm willing to bet everyone in there knew someone, had a family member that went to jail on some bunk ass petty charge.
Yeah.
And it ruined their life. Ruined someone's life.
Yeah.
And it's why? What are we doing that?
I don't know if you did the research there or whatever, but that was the right message for the right crowd. And I was like, that was cool. That was also a very sentimental night for me because I felt like I did really well that night. I kept getting, and people were waiting around. And we were talking to people, and one lady said, "I've been following you since the library." And she said, each time you've been in public, you've been gaining steam. She's like, I wish you had longer. She's like, I don't know what your budget is. I wish you had more money because I didn't see that many signs. And I was like, wow, that really validated. But there were 2 ladies out of the corner of my eye who were waiting to talk to me. And as the crowd got smaller and smaller, they got to me. And they were just kind of two white ladies. And they said, we just moved here. And she said, when we found out you were running, we came out to see who you are. We don't have voter registration cards here yet. I said, okay. And they said, Alford, was your dad's first name Frank? And I said, yeah. And the lady had tears in her eyes. My dad's been deceased for 14 years. And she said, he was a good man. She was like, I'm from South Bend, Indiana. Your dad was the director of housing when we were there. And I was like, oh, wow. And they said, he would have been proud.
Dude, that's great.
And I was just like, in the midst of all of these people, and these ladies waited and waited around to tell me that. And it's like, I really hadn't stopped at that point because it was so crazy. It was so like, bang, bang, and all of us got full-time jobs. Even Brian had a full-time job. So we're doing this at night and in between time. And, I had only been on this job since January 3rd. So like, now I'm running for mayor. Like, it's crazy. But my boss, who's on the school board for one of the richest counties in America, like encouraged me to do it. Like, if this is a shift in your life, who cares if you've only been here for 3 or 4 months, or whatever. So anyway, but I didn't know that people would know that, and I hadn't stopped long enough because a great deal of my resources comes from my dad's legacy. So I didn't sit down and say, I'm going to run for mayor to honor my dad and to his memory and this, that, and the other. But I hadn't stopped and thought about it until that moment. And when I saw the impact, that it was an honor because the impact he had made on their lives obviously was positive. For them to say he was a great man, and then to turn around and have his memory in their mind when listening to me talk, and then telling me he would have been proud. I hadn't heard anybody, even relatives, say that until after everything was over. But that was during, and that energized me. It touched me.
Wow. So, are you going to do it again? Or are you going to go for the Bellevue spot? Or?
So, it depends on.
Unknown.
It's let's just call it unknown.
Yeah. I didn't try to put you on the spot.
No.
Yeah.
When after was over, I received multiple calls. Democratic Party, Republican Party, because we had to run as nonpartisan, right?
We were talking about that beforehand because I was like, when you run for mayor of Nashville, you don't register your party,
right?
So everyone,
and nobody really knew. I mean, we knew where Swain stands, we know where Briley stands, we know where Love stands, we know where Gilmore stands, but like for us, that third tier, it wasn't obvious.
Right.
And I'm very much an independent, and I got calls from both parties. I got calls from Chamber of Commerce. I got calls from people wanting me to run for city council. And so the luxury of the campaign or the election happening when it happened, the timing of it, is that I could take a small break here and strategize what my next move is. I have many more options now than just running for my district. And it did what I wanted it to do, but it kind of gave me a nitrous boost into the political arena. And I love what I do. I love the company where I'm at. So I'm going to integrate somehow I'm going to stay grounded, be active, and figure out where I'm next. Because, it's really a lot of it is about money. I mean, Briley ran in 2012 and lost, but then, kept building his war chest. That's the one area I did not know about. I literally started my campaign with zero. Right? And a GoFundMe page, and then people started donating a little bit. But for the most part, I started turning money away. Not that I was getting a lot of money, but I was like, I know I'm not going to win. So I don't want to waste your money. So I need enough to make these signs or whatever, and I just kind of cut it off. But afterwards, man, people were pledging, like King was like, look, they didn't publish your budget because you didn't submit one to the election commission. Right, as far as like anything above $1,200.
Okay, right.
I don't have a problem saying I spent less than that. Right.
Mine were all goose eggs. Though.
Yeah.
We got an honest price.
Yeah, but I will tell you this: that if I believe the people that have come to me and pledged, I could start with a war chest somewhere around $150,000.
Dadgum.
But Briley's got one that's go 350, 400, whatever they're reporting. Swain, if she did it again, would be above that possibly. I mean, I don't know that Rick Santorum will write her another check, but
was he a big?
From what I understand, I think it was like a $60,000 check or whatever.
Which my joke about him is just like he's one of those people. He's so concerned about what gay people are up to, and has the world's largest sweater vest collection.
Yeah.
Whenever you see him on TV, you're like, damn, you got another sweater vest?
That's wrong, John. That's wrong.
But I was like, what do you care about what other people are doing?
Yeah. Nah, man, I
I saw Briley had a big fundraiser at Rich Riebling's house recently. It's like $1,500 a plate.
Yeah, that's
so
big
like,
boys.
They're just going to keep doing.
That's big boy stuff.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this: that where I work, where we're sitting right now, is the oldest money in Nashville, and the people around me. I mean, there's a doctor on this floor who I went to recently just to get like a mole removed or something. She is whole fundraiser for Bill Lee, Carl Dean, Phil Bredesen, and she said, I followed you in the election. Why didn't you come to me to raise money? Well, first of all, I don't know who you are, But we're right here in the heart of Belle Meade, and this is a bluer area than people think. And I'm telling you that if I wanted to be serious about it, I feel like I could have, with money, I feel like I could have finished in the top 3. That's the way I feel. Now, things would be slightly different, but in reality, I have to evaluate whether or not I want to take that on. But for me personally, I want to affect where I live locally, like the spot where I live. We got a lot going on out there. It's growing. It's getting, that we're building things faster, schools, all kinds of stuff. I want to affect that. That's still my number one goal. And since the election, I've been offered to do my own political radio show on Sundays on Free Agent Radio. So I'm going to do that. So that may give me the forum that I want to try and affect change. I don't feel like I need to be on city council. That's such a grind. It's such a deal.
It seems so terrible. Like they have the third reading on this thing. And it's
I watch them. I watch them religiously.
I went and did it. I did a speech there.
Okay.
Because they opened up. Poor fools. Opened up like anyone from the public can sign up, and you get 2 minutes before. It was a pilot program. You get 2 minutes before a council meeting. I think there were 5 people one night. 2 didn't even show up, so there were 3 of us. I went first, and so I kind of went up there, and you get 2 minutes to talk on a topic of your choice.
Okay.
So I went up there and kind of did my thing, try to play it straight, be a little respectful, but just kind of feel the room.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It is, and also too, there are maintained, established alliances. There are already established momentums. There's clicks, but there's also reputations. So, for instance, real quick, when Daniel Hambrick was shot and killed, that's the young man that was running from the police,
right?
And he got shot 3 times by Officer Delk. I knew Daniel. Not really well, but I also operate a men's basketball league for the last 14 years. He had dropped in a few times. I knew the people around him, knew some of his family members. So some of my basketball guys, I was sitting and watching Facebook, and they were Facebook Live in the streets talking about they're going to riot. And I started texting these guys. Some of my guys are 3rd and 4th chance guys. They're like, dude, you got 2 strikes. You don't need to be out there doing this. Let us fight for you. And they're like, well, where are you at? So I got in my car, literally went down there.
Yes.
And while watching Facebook Live, and then when I get there, I'm thinking, hey, I'm Carlin who ran for mayor, and I know, and I had seen in the news earlier where Harold Love was there. Well, I didn't see where they were booing him, because he was up with Mayor Briley and Bishop Breonna Mitchell standing behind Briley when Briley was reading a statement, and people were like, that's not what we want. And for you black ministers to be supporting, the police in this effort, that's what the way they castigated it.
Right.
So when I got there, I started name dropping. I was like, yeah, I'm here. I'm here to get some of my guys, but we're also here to listen to you all. And one lady was like, who are you? And I said, well, you may not know me, but I'm one of the people that ran for mayor, and I know Harold Love. That was the first word out of my mouth, and she's like, "Well, you can get out of here." She was like, "Because that two-faced blah 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 blah," and I'm like, "Whoa!" So before I can even help, before I can even lend a voice, I would have to cut through Harold's stuff, and so on being on city council, there's you're automatically going to be perceived a certain way. So one of the guys that came through my basketball system was James Shaw Jr., the Waffle House hero.
Right.
James played on my church team a few weeks ago. I've known him for a while. He goes to the school, and he went to the school. He and his sisters went to the school that I'm on the school board for, a private Christian school. Know him pretty well. And he's talking about he wants to run for mayor. And he and I are going to go to lunch here in the next couple of days, and my thing is don't do it. Because he's enjoying the love from everyone, and he can do so much more good when everybody's willing to listen to him. The moment that you set foot on the stage, say, I'm running for mayor, 50% of the world is going to hate you for no reason at all. For no reason at all. You will have enemies for no reason at all other than politics.
I think I got north of 50%, but
but I mean, you're talking about
right.
somebody that has a positive run with their name,
and then you get lumped into a
you're going to get lumped into one group or the other, and you're immediately going to have something you've never had in your celebrity, which is enemies. And I don't want them to experience that.
Were you able to cut through that night? Were you like...
Man, I was out there till about 2 a.m. just talking with people crying and screaming, you know, like his family members. I walked the trail from where he ran, because I'd watched the video several times, and I stood right where he dropped and died, basically. And I talked to people one at a time, and I told them I've been a victim of police violence. I laid out a plan of community policing that one of the top ranking police officers said, you're but one of only a couple of people in this election who came out with a viable plan. And he said, I like what you say. Now, me being a black man, me having been a victim of police brutality, even here in Nashville since moving here, a victim of profiling, and I have no criminal record or whatever, for me to be forced to put together something where we can improve the community policing and community relationships, that's what I consider part of one of my greatest experiences is having to humble myself, put away my, I guess you could say, biases and prejudices. I'm not typical because I come from a military and law enforcement family, so I don't hate cops. I'd be hating relatives.
Right.
But being a black man, diametrically opposed. I've been through it. Right. You know what I mean? And it's so the system is what we have to change. And so that was a humbling experience to have to put that together, but to know that it was received, at least in part, you know, by members of the police. And I've got friends on the force, you know. I've got friends in ranking positions. You know, so
you feel like that was part of your impact during that short amount of time?
I feel like it was part of the validation. I don't know that I had an impact, so to speak. For me to have an impact, people would have had to walk away and go, I'm going to implement what that guy was saying. And maybe they are, but I'm not privy to that. We've kind of gone back to our civilian lives, right. You know. So, but I will say, like I said, it was huge impact. And all these little arteries, you know, we didn't get interviewed by the police. You know, they tried to do that in the dark. They sent out that letter and said, if you don't respond by this Friday.
I didn't even go because I was like,
I couldn't get it. So I wrote a letter to the Tennessean that said, I don't think this is right. Like, if the FOP. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm sure there were a few others, and they came out later and said, due to the lack of time, we're not going to endorse anybody. Because the only two people that were able to go was like Briley and Swain.
Yeah.
But that's because they knew, right? And we didn't get notified until late. So I was like, because I tell you what, I said, put me up in front of the police, and I'll bust this party up, because what I have to say, what I have to say, the police are not gonna feel like I'm some community activist that wants to just, you know,
say boo on you.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So that was eye opening.
So that night when you were down there till 2 a.m. do you feel like you going down there and engaging in dialogue with people kind of helped? Was it a you know, like relief valve at all? Did people talking about what had happened? I'm just so impressed that you went down there right away.
It was organically happening anyway. People were diffusing. It was over the you know, the I don't know what you call it, the protest or whatever. People had signs. People were sitting on the sidewalk. Some people were laying on benches. They were emotionally spent. So I had gotten there after it was all over. And then the lady, I won't mention her name, but the lady who was kind of leading the whole thing, she's a community activist, and I could tell she was a little perturbed that I was there. And she and I sat, And I said, she said, we're going to have meetings every month of, she said, prominent people in the community until we get this community police oversight board in place. And she said, you were against that in the election. I was following you. And I was like, I was. And I said, I still am. And she was like, then why are you out here? I said, because if all we're going to do is make the police upset, you'll have more of these incidences. I said that was like, if you follow me, then you listen to what I said. But if you didn't listen to what I said, then you're just going to think that, oh, he's siding with police. He doesn't want oversight, wants to let them do whatever they want to do. And I said, no. What I want to do is come up with real world solutions to community policing problems. If all you're going to do is sit back and tell the police when they're wrong after the fact, but you have no teeth in order to enforce things to create deterrence for police to continue this behavior, then all you're going to do is like the bully. You're going to come down, you're going to get on the bully, you're going to suspend him, and when he gets back to school, he's going to be twice as hard on you because you're not around.
Right.
Said my proposal was to have a committee of attorneys that the city pays for that will investigate as an independent committee any police activity that's considered criminal, like Officer Delp, and be willing to indict as a special counsel.
Okay.
I said, rather than spending millions of dollars of having civilians like myself, and all the police are going to do is like say, you need to go on a ride along. You don't understand. Everything happens so quick. Yada yada yada. All the boilerplates and the lines. Well, the community people are going to say, well, it's a bunch of racists and guess what? Both are true, right? So you're still stuck in this thing. So what keeps people towing the line? Well, the threat that you can be indicted. The issue isn't that it happens. Stuff happens. It's that there were 0 indictments in America for cops that were killing unarmed black men. Damn. So why not put together a group of attorneys that can do that can put that deterrent in place, but not interfere with the daily operations of policing? And I think the police understood that, feel that, and understand that something needs to be put in place without somebody looking over your shoulder that doesn't know what they're doing.
Were you able to explain that to her?
I was.
And you got feedback or?
And she shut it down.
Okay.
I've never heard from her since. I said, I want to be on your planning committee. I want to be on the group that discusses this before it comes to a vote. And she said, she got my number and everything like that. Never called me.
That's all right. I called.
I actually offered to be on that committee, but then, I didn't go down and apply, and I told people not to go down and nominate my name because I was like, am I going back on what I said? Now that it's been voted through, and is it going to look like I'm just trying to keep my name relevant because I said I don't think it's going to be effective, and I still believe it's not going to be an effective way of changing behavior of rogue police.
Yeah, and so you're saying just the fact that all will be equal under the law, that alone will help bring some. If cops think the law applies to them also,
yeah,
they'll follow it as well.
It'll make them think twice. Make them think twice. Right now, there's no deterrent for a police officer to not be careful. Let's put it at that. Let's take the racism thing out of it. Take out intentionality of killing black bodies. I'm talking about a guy's like, I'm not as careful with this black life because I'm afraid, I'm scared, or whatever it is that they say. It'll make them think twice if they go, if I'm wrong about this, I may be indicted. You know what I mean? Because I want to take this guy down. Because I think he's a threat, and if he's not a threat, he's a piece of trash anyway because he's dealing weed and and he's got his pants sagging and he's probably about nothing and got 3 or 4 babies and I'm doing the world a favor by taking him out. You'll think twice about taking his life if you're going to spend the rest of your life behind bars or get the death penalty. Daniel should be alive today. Dan should be alive today. Shouldn't have had the back of his head blown off while running away. And I mean, I've had this debate with prominent people in higher places than mine and gone, do you realize that the penalty for running from a police officer is called evading? And evading typically carries with it a 6-month sentence and a fine, not the death penalty. Combined with a felony, it may add a year to your sentence and a higher fine. It's still not the death penalty. So when you say he was running and that's why I killed him, you are breaking really the law. You're circumventing the law, because what you're called to do is to pursue him, subdue him, bring him to justice, let the courts decide. You don't decide whether he lives and dies right there.
No, well said. So Harold Love came out that night, but none of the others?
No, okay, so Harold Love was a part of...
Have you talked to him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Did
Harold
you see him at church?
No, he doesn't go... He doesn't
go there.
He campaigns at our church. Our church is a pretty prominent church in that zip code.
Okay.
And so he comes, and I really didn't even pay attention to it. I've seen him over the years. You know, he comes there, and he'll campaign, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll vote for Harold, whatever, you know. And then when the election came up, you know, and he's campaigning, and we're doing like neighborhood events where it's his name on it. I'm like, wait a second, this is my church, you know. And eventually, my pastor kind of figured it out. I mean, I went to him directly. I'm like, hey, either we're not campaigning for anyone, or we're providing a free platform for everyone. Like, I'm running. But he's like, are you serious? I thought you were kind of joking a little bit. Like, no, my name's on the ballot, you know. Yeah. So that kind of got evened out. But I see I see Harold because he's in that community. I don't live in that community anymore, but I go to the church.
Okay.
So he's not a member of our church, but everybody knows who he is. Yeah. So I'm able to I've had conversation with him since then. But he was in the press conference with Briley, standing behind him along with Bishop Breonna Mitchell. And that was right after it happened, and emotions were raw. And people were like, wait a second, you weren't at the NAACP press conference, but you're at the mayor's press conference. So you kind of look like his boy.
Yeah.
And that's where, and that stuck with some people.
Do you know Ludi? Speaking of Ludi.
I do not know him personally.
I'm so interested in that story. I don't think
he's like a ghost.
Yeah, because I was like,
got more votes than me. The man didn't even
I was
run.
like, he's the reason for the season.
He's the reason why we're even running.
Everyone got moved up, and then it's like he wasn't even there, and it's like,
I met with the new director.
Oh, he's not the he's not the head.
She's not even the head of it anymore. I met with the new director of the NAACP. I mean, he's just new to town. So he didn't even really know what's going on around him, and making certain alliances with them. But Ludi's probably living his best life right now.
I guess that was one thing about being out there is you don't really get to know everybody. You get to kind of BS backstage is what I was calling it. You know, and I remember at that last forum, I was the only guy Briley really was interested, because he's like, I guess the rest were, he was just kind of confused, I think, by what I was doing. But that's when I kind of flipped it that night, and kind of like, here's a couple things I believe in, and I know some other people do too. Yeah. So I think even if I have no delusions that I'm going anywhere, I just want my ideas out there, and I want them part of the discussion. That's what was so impressive, that you actually went down there that night, and you're like in the dialogue, because that, I don't know, to your point, that everyone's like, kind of the BS responses that you get from some of the more established candidates are like, we just need to be more inclusive. It's like everyone's saying that. That doesn't mean any. If everyone says it, you're not saying anything different, you know. And
well, and then there's people that were saying stuff by not saying anything at all. Like you take a Carol Swain, and it feels like I'm picking on her, but she's really the only one who kind of had a major difference in her rhetoric than the rest of us. I'm talking from tier 1 to tier 3. She kind of was over there by herself, right? I mean, if we want to call it what it is, she might have been the only conservative, quote unquote. I mean, Napier, yes. If you want to throw Ralph, but Ralph's an independent, and he ruffled some feathers of the conservatives with some of the things that he said on his way out the door, WTN. Even though they're they're together again.
Yeah, because
they endorsed him.
Okay, they did. But
they did.
His radio show, they were kind of like,
yeah.
Did they?
He doesn't have a radio show anymore.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if it was as amicable as they say it is now.
Exactly. That's what I feel.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. I actually did an okie doke on them because Jeff Napier was very upset that WTN didn't do open interviews for all of the candidates.
Oh.
He said, well, Carol Swain paid for advertising there, so they did Ralph Bristol. They did a long interview with him, but it was kind of like, he's an alumnus of here. Let's do this. He said, but even he's like, I'm a conservative. They didn't interview me. He's like, have they reached out to you? I'm like, why would they reach out to me? And he was like, no, but they should. And I was like, yeah, they should, but let's be honest, And so I called in.
So great.
I called in and I didn't disguise my voice. I told them because I knew that they weren't paying attention to the election the way they say they were. I said, "I'm Carlin. I want to talk about the election." And I got on the air, and I was like, they were like, "Yeah, isn't it the driven by the liberal media and yada 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 yada?" And I said, "Well, what we're driven by is the lack of turnout. This is probably going to be one of the lowest turnouts in mayoral history." And whoever the host was, he was like, "Yeah, okay." He was like a little confused. And I said, "And to be honest with you, this is going to be one of the first times that we're going to have to vote on the issues." And he was like, "Yeah, so where do you stand?" I said, "Oh, Stan, I'm actually one of the candidates." And he ended the call real quick. Okay, well, call us back afterwards. Call us back afterwards, and we'll talk. We'll be more than happy to talk to you. And then he was like, okay, well, he kind of tricked us a little bit there. I'm like, how did I trick you? Use my real name. So I did. I called back the day after the election. And they were like, same guy, same host. And he's like, I made an invitation for this guy to call back, and he did pretty good in the election. We're gonna, talk to him a little. And he asked me questions, and I won him over.
Okay.
He was like, why you talked about it was gonna be a low turnoff. Why? And I said, well, one is because people don't believe that they're going to make an impact with their vote. And I said, two, we live in a city where even though we have major issues, we got it good here. We kind of have it good. So there's apathy. And then I said, three, I actually talked to some people the night of the election. We walked around downtown. We had a watch party with Albert Hacker and Jeff Napier. All three of us did downtown. Albert has some buddies that had a third floor suite, and we were watching it all. So we went down on the street afterwards. I'm talking to people. I'm like, hey, I just ran for mayor. I lost. Why didn't you vote or whatever? And one guy said, because the fix was in. He said because Briley was going to win anyway. That's why I didn't vote. And when I said that on WTN, the host was like, there it is. The fix, because the conspiracy theorists. There it is. Come from one of the candidates. Straight from one of the candidates. And the fix was in. And I was like, yeah, look, hey. And so he tried to steer me into he's like, well, you must be a conservative if you have that viewpoint. And I said, I'm telling you what the people said. I said, so we have to adjust our narrative as candidates to give them trust in the system again. That when you vote, no matter who you, and I relayed that story I talked about when we were on 92Q, how I felt like Carol Swain was, and you know what? He didn't cut me off.
Wow.
And Carol Swain is their guy. I mean, that's their candidate. And I said, that was voter intimidation, whether she meant for it to be or not.
Sure.
And I said, to deter people from voting because their candidate is not going to win, that's not what America is about. And he was like, man, well, call us back again sometime. So,
dude, that's great. Yeah, I had a defeat party. I was at the beach. and our kids are still really young, so the grandparents are watching them. But so we had to get the 5 o'clock dinner. So we're in this fancy restaurant, no one else is there. So I was like, get a picture of me, just in this giant fancy.
But nobody else.
Just yep, gonna celebrate.
I gotta be honest, Briley's watch party was huge. I mean, I'm watching it on the news, but I'm thinking to myself, he's not even really that popular. How are all these people?
Well, and that's what I was telling someone. I was like, I'm willing to bet there's a large percentage of people voted for Briley because because really they couldn't cast a negative vote for Carol.
Right.
They didn't know anything about David, but they didn't like her. And so that's why I was kind of pitching alternative voting schemes when I was like, also maybe we should look into ranked voting, because for a lot of people, negative voting, no one's going to jump on board. I know that's a little wild, but really, I'm willing to bet there's a large percentage of Briley people that if they could have just put a negative next to Carol, they would have.
They would have.
Because it wasn't even about him.
It wasn't. And I think for a great number of people, it wasn't about him. It was about not being for her. All she did was regurgitate the Trump platform. She was like, guns are good. Build the wall, drain the swamp, lock her up. I mean, she didn't say some of that, but what I'm saying is that was the tone of her rhetoric. Like, do you have anything to say about the state of our public schools? Do you have anything to say about the increase that was promised to our teachers that didn't get delivered? Do you have anything to say about the 18% of our population that lives below the poverty line? Yet we are battling Denver for the lowest unemployment rate in the country. Like, do you have anything to say about any of those things? And she didn't. No. She didn't. Where she got where she was just by being the only true conservative candidate that was endorsed nationally. That's it. Like, I was not impressed at all by anything that she had to say. I don't feel like we got to get rid of cronyism. We got to get rid of, the corruption and yada yada. No.
Right. Was there anybody you were impressed by that came out of, like, you certainly impressed some people because you were kind of in this tier of unknown names, and then you rise and you do really well at some of these meetings. Were there other ones where you're like, oh, okay?
I think everybody was impressed with Jeff Carr. I was impressed. I was impressed with Jeff Carr. I wanted him to be more.
Okay.
I mean, he's such a nice guy.
Yes.
If I was his campaign manager, I would have put a hard edge on Jeff, because Jeff comes out the box and people like him. He just starts talking.
Forum, that's what, like, after I said I got my laughs and I bounced. Yeah. He was coming back and he was like, "Man, that was great." He's like, "When I get in there, I want you on my team." And I was like, "All right."
Yeah. But I wanted him to come at the issues a little bit harder, because the transit issue by the time we were doing the election was a dead issue. Think about it. It was already voted on. It was voted down.
Right.
And so Jeff's claim to fame was being the face of defeating that, right? I needed him to be more than that, because he was impressive. I felt like he was a viable candidate to challenge Briley and Swain and be in that upper tier based on his policies. And I feel like I was very impressed with Jeff. But I also saw the glaring hole that like, oh, how'd they miss that?
Other candidates, or his candidacy in particular?
No, and his candidacy, yeah. Like, like you when you have a full platform, and his had this glaring hole, which was beyond the transit,
beyond this single issue,
that you did win. Beyond that, what do you got? And I really wish he had hit that, because I feel like people were like, yeah, that was good.
I remember he did go into his affordable housing initiative.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying he didn't have it. What I'm saying is that I wouldn't
move beyond transit.
Yeah, I wouldn't have hit the transit things as hard, because there was nothing else on the table. Now, if he had come with a new plan, as like, all right, that's been defeated, here's the layout of what we're going to do to go forward, that might have vaulted him, right? But it was just basically, hey, I won that part, right? And people were like, yeah, great.
I can imagine he and his team were probably exhausted.
Oh, gosh.
Gone through that. Then it's like, dadgum, we got another thing coming right up.
Yeah, I met him for the first time. Well, I shouldn't say that. My wife used to work with him years ago. Nashville's small, but I met him at a debate in Bellevue near my house. It was a big debate, and Professor Malcolm, whatever, I forgot his last name, who had all of these mathematical, like probabilities and stuff, was debating the attorney who was behind the transit thing. Anyway, he got crushed that night, and Carr was there. I was like, hey, you're running for mayor. And he's like, I'm not talking about that tonight. I told my people that we're going to see this bill through, that it gets voted down. Then I'll talk about being mayor. And I was like, do you even really want to be mayor? I didn't realize that night he was really making a commitment to his base, that he was going to take one thing at a time. So that validates what you were saying. I think that once that went through, I feel like he probably started a little late campaigning.
And I saw that he had mentioned that a lot of times. It's like if the people had more than 6 weeks to get to know, you would have seen a larger variety of views come out. You would have seen heartier debate.
Yeah.
You would have seen more animated discussion, because it's like a dinner party where it's over and no one's sat down yet. Everyone's like getting their drink, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You're still in that phase. You're still in the what do you do phase on your first drink.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't want to, dude. Thanks. Yeah, I don't want to beat it home too much, but this was everything I hoped it would be.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because part of that was that no one got to see anybody as stories. They see one sentence in the scene. They see, if you want it. That I will give them, David and the crew at the Tennessean, credit, because I was like, they actually sat down with me. They sat down with every candidate. They gave them an hour or 30 minutes or whatever it was, and they went topic by topic.
And I want to make it clear, I feel exactly the same way. In fact, I feel like everybody got a chance to be exposed to the public, and a lot of that has to do with the Tennessean and how they handle it. I'm saying that I don't want that to be. I don't want what I say to be misconstrued about creation of the tiers, because it wasn't just them, Well,
it seems like they kind of created that, and then other news outlets kind of like followed suit. And they're like, okay, here's Carr's important because of transit. We know the last name Gilmore. We know the last name Love.
Right.
We know the last name Briley. Carol Swain is known for these stances, and Bristol is long time
personality.
Boy, done good here in this niche.
Yeah. I get it, but I just want to. I would agree with you that they did a good job, and I feel like the media in general did a good job of giving all of us an opportunity to speak.
Yeah. Maybe.
Except for WTN.
But they put you on.
Under the cover of night.
Yeah. I was actually, and then I think it was Nashville Business Journal. Mm-hmm. I was like, all right, you want to hear what all right, we'll see if it runs. And I was like, damn, they ran it. That's crazy as hell. I was kind of impressed by, they just played it by the book. And then I think, did you go on Fox?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think they had a bunch, they had everybody on.
They had everybody. Totally enjoyed that.
They did the right thing.
Totally enjoyed that. That was great.
I think that's.
I was on the same day with Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff was on it right after me.
I had to call in because I was at.
I remember that. I was looking at the picture of you, and it's like voice of John Sewell, and I was like, "Oh, he did it again." Somebody stole the show without even being there.
And all I did was brought up. I kept making references to. Do you remember that old show? It was big money, no whammy.
Yeah, no whammy, no whammy.
I was like, I brought that. I was like, no one even remembers that show. Why am I even referencing? Press Your Luck. That's right. It's like, like, the critter comes out and got the money.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes. And this is everything I wanted it to be. I wanted to hear your personal experience, because I feel like there were so many interesting experiences there. They're gone in an instant, and then I don't know. I wanted to at least get some stories out there now, and then we later on be like, you know what? I actually talked with somebody about that, and it was interesting.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.